In times of crisis and struggle, what is it that we can do? I know for myself, I've gone through my challenges. I'm going through challenges right now. I have in the recent past, and I'm going to have them in the future. And those of you watching this video may be going through the same thing, right? Whether you're the beginning of a journey, you have to restart, right? People go through divorces and people do career changes, losing a job. I mean, there's a million things, right? Losing close friends, family members. There's a million things that we can categorize as abrupt tragedy or whatever it is that cause us, especially emotionally, but in addition to that, it could be financially, right? Mentally, spiritually, to go through tough times. And I know a lot of people right now are falling on tough times, right? Like I've said, I'm going through my challenges too as a person and as a business owner. And I wanted to make this video specifically addressing it, letting you guys know that number one, you're not alone. Number two, give you some specific things that you can do and some things that I've done over the years to assist with this. Because what's going to happen is as time goes on and you live your life, you're going to continuously go through hard times. You're just going to develop as a person and you're going to be able to handle the challenges and the tough times differently. That's what it's about, right? I think even Bruce Lee said, don't pray for an easy life, pray for the strength to be able to endure a tough one, or something like that, right? You guys can correct me in the comment section if I misquoted that. Tough times, right? Let's break it down. When I look at the last 12 years especially, that I've been sharing stuff online, right? Almost 13 years now. I've been faced with a tremendous amount of adversity. And whether it's personal stuff, business stuff, I want to let you know that the process of dealing with it isn't an easy one. However, it is simple at the end of the day. Okay? First and foremost, when we go through tough times, what seems to be the one thing that, and there's many, right? But what seems to be one of the principal things that begins to be erratic, out of control, a point of chaos in our lives. And in many cases, it's our own mind, thought process, and self-talk. Let's start there. Compare when you're feeling good or you're firing on all cylinders in that category, right? The self-talk, your state of mind, compared to when you're going through tough times. Do you see a major difference there? Because if you start paying attention and you bring some awareness to it, you'll see very clear and key distinctions. I know when things aren't going good, my mind tends to start wandering in the sense of, well, if it's bad now, what's going to happen next week and next month? And right, let's say you're going through a financial struggle right now. I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to be out on the street. People are going to make fun of me, right? We play that timeline out 6 months, a year from now, and that now starts messing with us. We spend a lot of time in those daydreams and hallucinations. And we start slowly, again, doing that more and more and more to where, again, remember the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what you imagine and what you think and material reality, like the reality that we live in. Therefore, if I'm constantly conjuring up those images and creating those feelings and running that narrative and movie in my mind, I'm going to create that state, the emotional state. And I eventually will create that as my reality. And that's the first thing when tough times come up that we start losing control of. And the counter, which I understand is, well, Bryan, it's tough. How could we not think about it all the time when we're constantly reminded or, right, someone's bringing it up or we get a bill in the mail? Look, I get it, right? We first need to become aware of that and say, okay, this is a mechanism that now is really here at the core affecting us in a way that is not conducive to growth, is not getting us closer to the promised land. So one of the first tweaks that people need to make, and this is like a two-part kind of tweak, right? Number one is these initial thoughts and words, self-talk, right, has to start shifting, which you can do through journaling and verbal exercises, right? But number two is, what's the solution? We need to become solution-oriented. So asking better questions to yourself. How can I remedy this situation? How can I start the process to make this better? Like, let's say I lost somebody and it's weighing on me emotionally. I can say, well, what are some things that I can do right now to focus myself on healing? What is something I can do or say right now that will get me one step closer to the acceptance of this and me moving on and being happy? What's one activity or one thing I can do right now to take my mind off of this? What's one thing I can say, one thing I can do that will begin to affect my emotional state in a positive way, right? We start asking ourselves better questions and directing the mind, because the psyche, the mind, the subconscious mind, right? It's used to getting commands. And when you ask questions to your mind and you start conditioning it to get these questions, it's going to find a solution. If people are not engaged in using their reason and logic, critical thinking, right, and analysis, often these exercises in the beginning become very difficult and people believe them to be futile. Like, oh, well, that's not going to work, or that's silly, that sounds dumb. Of course, if you've never done it, absolutely, I agree. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds silly. It sounds like an actual waste of time. Like 100%. I would agree with you. It sounds that way and seems that way. But you need to do something. You need to apply these things. We need to now say, you know what? I may believe right now that they're BS. Let's put it to the test. That becomes a switch in the mind. So now as you start asking better questions, you start directing your mental mechanism in the right way. Because if I now ask questions that are more solution oriented and more towards becoming stronger, becoming better, right? Accepting the situation, because a lot of these things that happen are just part of the dynamic of life. We're going to lose people. Some of us have lost friends to tragedy, being murdered, right? Maybe being locked up in jail forever, car accident, just regular natural causes, a death. That's stuff that we're going to deal with in our material reality. All of you at some point, if you haven't yet, you're going to be betrayed. You're going to be lied to. Someone's going to break your trust. These are all unfortunate circumstances and situations that every single human being is going to deal with. What changes? How you respond to it and how it affects you. That has to grow and change and develop. And the more that you can bear the brunt of life's force, these things that are outside of your control that are going to happen that tend to, again, be a negative thing, the better you can handle that. And the more skillfully that you navigate those situations, things begin to shift. If I now handle death differently than before, it's going to have a net positive outcome. If stress comes in and the pressure of life, paying bills, right? A little bit of extra work at my career, whatever it is. Maybe your income dips temporarily because you're an entrepreneur like me. Like I've had my income go up and down, right? How do you deal with that though? The better you get at dealing with that, the easier it is to put a smile on your face, keep working, and understand that this is the ebb and flow of life. Because really, what's one of the underlying understandings there and applications for you is, I'm okay, and I want you to say this, I want you to type it in the comment section, I want you to journal this, and I want you to say, I'm okay not being able to control everything. I'm okay not having the answers to everything. Those are two mantras that you can repeat. I'm okay not being in control of it. Can I control everything? Can I control the weather? Can I control if tomorrow somebody betrays me and decides to do that? There's certain things that I cannot control. But I need to be okay with that. And if it happens, I can't say that I'm surprised, because as experience and wisdom comes in, as we grow, and this is the way you do it, if you really engage with life, you'll start to pick up on things. Because one of the main elements there is you have to pay attention. That's how you learn. This is one of the most underrated, yet valuable things you get from like coaching and training with somebody in your perspective field, right? Is the experience and wisdom that they can impart on you from said field or thing. So now you already know, and when you come across that situation, it's not a shock or a surprise, you're prepared. Because you've learned from somebody who's been there and done that a million times over. Which is why, like, when I bring salespeople into my team or my coaching programs, it's a different ballgame for them, because they'll be nervous, but when they're faced with that situation that I've drilled with them and coached them on, even though they're nervous because it's their first time, they're prepared for it, and it's not a curveball where they come back later and they're like, oh man, the client said XYZ and I didn't have an answer. Well, I've already given you the answer. The answer might not come out perfect, but at least they have the answer and it's not a shock to them. So this wisdom, right? This experience, these lessons, this knowledge now begins to change that for you, which is why the first time something happens has to be and must be the last time that it affects you the way that it did. Because it's safe to say, and I and anybody would grant you the grace, that when something happens to you that's out of your control for the first time, like the first time a friend or family member passes away and it's your first time experiencing it, I would be okay with whatever response I get from somebody. However, the second time, assuming that person was mature and wanted to, again, have a better viewpoint on life, a better understanding on life, and a better experience of life, I would expect them to learn from that experience, so when that happens again, they respond more favorably, more conducive to them being in a strong state of mind, more conducive to them having more mastery over their emotions and not letting things get to them. Because as you do life and you've carved out your path and say, this is what I want to do, life throws things at you. And the ones who stay steadfast and strong and are bumped off that course the least amount are the ones who get the most stuff done, who are the most satisfied, who are the happiest. The people who let every little or big thing knock them off, they're the people who are in chaos and array, and they're just all over the place. And then they wonder why, oh man, they feel as if life is happening to them. And the people who are more in control feel as if they have purpose and destiny and they've assigned it and they're creating their life. That's really the distinction there. That's really the distinction there, right? So dealing with heartache and stress and unfortunate circumstances is something that all of you are going to deal with. All of you. What changes is you. You develop, you grow, right? And we've talked about some of the things that you can do. In addition to that, something I mentioned is your elders, your mentors, your coaches, the people who teach you, is a very strong element in this, because people who really care about you, who are invested in your growth and in your future, will impart a lot of this wisdom, tell you a lot of these stories, and really prepare you for what can happen, right? And I think a lot of people underestimate that. This is why it's so imperative, and you've heard who you surround yourself with, who you associate with, who your friends are, is so important when it comes to these things. I love hearing from the elders or the teachers and the instructors and the coaches about how they dealt with certain situations, how it affected them emotionally, what they did right, what they did wrong, what they learned, what they would change, how they've changed, how they're responding now compared to before. If they were to do it again, how would they do it, right? Not only am I asking those types of questions, they understand, and they're teaching this type of stuff and talking about it, which is why I feel, and I strongly believe this, when you're working with people, even if, like, let's say you had a business coach, let's say I or someone else is your business coach, there has to be a lot of true personal development woven into what people are teaching you. Because again, if you come into me and I have a system for you for your career, let's say, where you're at now as a person will allow you to utilize those tools to whatever extent. The more that you grow and develop and become a better version of you as a whole, your ability to utilize those tools and things that I give you begins to go up and improve exponentially, which is the whole goal here, which is why I really love working with the individual. Sure, all the information and tactics and all that's fun and it's great, and it is important. But the more that you develop and the better that you get as a person from top to bottom, inside and out, the more effective you're automatically going to be in every area and every category of life. And dealing with life's blows is super important. That's how I believe I've been forged in the fire, and like the blacksmith heating up the metal and hitting it. I look back at the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey and my real estate career and my sales career, and man, I got my ass kicked the first year or two. It was tough, but I'm so glad I went through those situations and faced them head on, because it built the fortitude, it built my character, and it built me into the person that I am today. Emotionally resilient, steadfast, I work hard, I stick to my purpose, right? That's what's kept people around me and helped my organization, my team, my network, my programs, my communities all grow. Because that's really what it's about. And the more that an individual becomes focused on that, because that's the bigger picture here, the career and everything else will begin to fall into line. And this is a life skill. I would put this under life skill, dealing with life's adversities and challenges and unexpected blows that it gives you. Because again, everybody's going to deal with it. It's an inevitable part of life. If you can deal with this, then the blow of, and the impact of not getting the deal, the customer telling you no, right? It's okay. You'll deal with it. You won't beat yourself up. You won't fall into a spiral like most people, and you'll be a lot more resilient, because that's what this is about, is building resiliency as a human being, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, right? that's what you want and that's what you want to develop. But again, you have to be faced with circumstances and deal with these things to grow. Because one thing I'm finding nowadays is people want to develop or get better at something without actually doing it, right? You could watch let's say you religiously watch my old content and my new content about sales. You could build some skills for sure, but if you never go out there and actually sell at a high level, your skills will be limited because you're not getting enough experience to assimilate the information, utilize it, really learn it, and then understand it and master it, which is what you need to do if you want to take it to that level. So we have to engage with life and these things and these circumstances head on, because that's another point. You have to face these things head on. When it comes to emotions, you cannot try to deny them or change them or ignore them. You deal with them. If you want to get stronger emotionally, feel the emotion of anger and sit with it and let it brew within you. And get okay with that feeling of anger to know what it's like and connect with it. It doesn't mean you need to be erratic, yell at people, be out of control or whatever it is. Same thing with sadness. Feel the sadness. It's okay to cry. But you need to get to the point where you can feel these emotions for the valid reasons that you're supposed to feel them and not let it destroy you, and deal with it like a mature adult. Because if you're watching this, you're 18 plus. Again, an example of what's going to happen to you in life. You're going to have your ups and downs and everything in between. How do you respond and how do you act when those emotions come in? Are you the type to get angry and then you name call and throw stuff and break stuff? That's bad. That means emotions have control over you. You're not, again, a higher level and operating human being. You are a slave to your emotions. You're stuck at the survival mechanism level of the human being, which literally puts you on par with an animal. You would have to develop and grow to be able to function as a human being at higher levels. That's a part of this process, but if everywhere you look and the people that taught you, all the examples were people giving into their emotions, well, naturally that's what you're going to do, but it's up to you now to recognize it, see it for what it is, and then develop and grow past it. You see, but an individual has to be really in tune with themselves and do introspection to not only be aware of these types of things, but actually actively acknowledge it and then want to work on it and actually do something about it. Because that's the key. It's one thing to intellectualize this stuff and listen, oh, this is good stuff, but what is being done about it? The next time you get angry, what are you going to do? Are you going to set a new rule for yourself that you're going to sit with your anger for 30 seconds? Because I'll even give you an example from my life where I understand this stuff, so I use it to help me. I've had customers call me or come into my office upset. Oh man, your agent, blah, blah, blah. You know what, sir? I need like another couple minutes here in my office, but then I'll have my assistant call you in. And if they're angry, I tell my assistant, let them in about 5 minutes. And I handle stuff in the office, I let them blow off their steam. By the time they come into my office 5 minutes later, their level of anger has gone down because they have to sit there with the emotion and they have to now begin to try to stay angry. So even if they try, right, by the time they come in, most of the wind is out of their sails and they've calmed down a bit and they're a little bit more rational. Because I understand these people aren't used to sitting with the anger or whatever that particular emotion is. They're used to people facing them head on and them fighting or dealing with it in the moment. But if I'm going to make them sit with it, they're not used to that, right? Which is why it begins to go down. Because after a while, if it's ever happened to you, you have to try to be angry. I figured this out early on in my career. I was pissed off one day, playing the victim, like, oh man, I'm not getting results, this is bullshit, I'm working so hard. But after a couple hours, I was like, dude, I'm just wasting time. I'm sitting here complaining, crying, bitching and moaning, and I'm at a point now where I have to force myself to be upset now and like ignore people and all that. This is stupid, this is silly. And after that, everything changed. Everything changed because I realized, I was like, you know what? Me giving into my emotions or playing this card is dumb. I'm playing a character now. I'm forcing this. This is stupid. This is silly. And from then on, I matured tremendously emotionally. And I didn't let that type of stuff get to me or frustration or whatever any of those emotions are. I started navigating them with much more understanding, clarity, and maturity, which is really the point here. Because that's kind of the bridge of that gap between the animalistic side of the human being and the higher intelligence side is your emotions. So are you going to respond like an animal? Like the things that we've tamed and conquered on this planet? Or are you going to use your noggin? Your higher intelligence? Because that's what this is about. Life is going to, again, We were all born into a world that we would all agree that life is not fair. Nothing is fair. Maybe you were born into an abusive family or not enough money or whatever it is, and I get it, right? I've had my struggles, right? Maybe some of you have had it worse than me and vice versa. It's okay. We can acknowledge that and move on and say, hey, not everybody was dealt a perfect card, some of us better cards than others. That's fine. But we move forward with a certain level of understanding and maturity to say, in spite of all that, I can still do something about this and I can keep moving forward, and it's not an excuse or a valid reason for me to be emotionally erratic and all this other stuff that we see. Be the eye of the storm, right? Be the example of conquering a lot of these things in life that other people either don't pay attention to or have no interest in conquering because they don't see what's on the other side of it. And being able to deal with life's blows and ups and downs and disappointments and all that, again, many times it being out of your control is okay. It's a dynamic that you need to become aware of and understand and accept. Also knowing that that ultimately cannot stop you, because the will of a determined human being has been stopped by nothing. Look how far we've made it from where we were in the past, our ancestors, to where we're at now. It is crazy what we've achieved and done, all with this. Okay? Got a ton of free resources for you in the description. Make sure you check them out. Anything else I can do for you, let me know. Peace, blessings, and abundance to everybody. We'll see you on the next video.